So, I was driving to work the other day, and along General Holmes Drive, I saw a massive billboard to my right flashing. Best episode ever. Hunted this Sunday. Needless to say, I couldn't wait for Sunday to roll around and watch it. Best episode ever? We're about to find out.
Hey everyone, this is the Recreate Podcast. Today we're talking about Hunted Australia, Season 3, Episode 3. Best episode ever? We'll find out.
So we left episode 2 with quite a cliffhanger. Luke and Ben stranded in the bush of Peacedale with nowhere to go, surrounded by hunters and seemingly stuck. But before we get into that, Ep, we thought we'd talk about the best episodes ever to date on Hunted and why they're so good. So I had a quick glance back at the short history of Hunted AU, and I've come up with 3 episodes that stood out. Other than the finales, they're Season 1, Episode 7, Season 2, Episode 4, and Season 2, Episode 7. So what makes a good episode? I think that's the same things that make a good movie, a good thriller.
I think there has to be tension and suspense. There has to be some strong characters and good pacing in the drama.
Yeah, some psychological elements, some emotion, resolution, like a good plot, and a little bit of a cliffhanger doesn't hurt too. Some impact, emotional impact, real consequences to the actions. The characters need to move and they need to get affected.
And I think it's good also if we have like a hero, a villain, someone we're rooting for, someone that we're against, where we want someone to win or to lose. Yeah.
Yeah, real investment in the characters. So let's go back over the great episodes of all time Hunted AU. It's been a short history, but there's been a few memorable episodes. Season 1, Episode 7, the journey of Puneet and Chris and Nick and Lavinia.
Yes, that was actually one of my favorite episodes. So Puneet and Chris, they have an Indian background. Chris, he is a crypto trader, so he is very tech savvy. Puneet, he works in disability, so he's very social. Mm-hmm. And one of their key points was that they use WhatsApp to contact their friends. Yeah. So it's all non-encrypted, no one can trace them. As soon as they were at a friend's house, their friend noticed a login on his Google services, and immediately they were very alert. Puneet and Chris, they just left the house straight away. They didn't dally around. Yeah. They moved straight away to another location, which I thought is absolutely necessary. You have to act on the fly a lot if you're a fugitive.
Yeah, they showed some high quality play. They were relatable. They were quick, mobile, agile. They did a lot right, and they were really tech savvy. And I think if I recall, the capture was really thrilling too, which is what made the episode really good. They had gotten to an apartment on the run. Unfortunately, there was only one way in and one way out. They went up onto the first floor of the apartment and the hunters just caved in on them. Really thrilling. The way it was put together, it really was like a thriller. And they ultimately just accepted their fate. They just sat there and surrendered.
Yeah, it was very successful, that capture. I think because they were boxed in, they had nowhere to run. You could see them. They noticed that the hunters were coming in for them from the window.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there was just only one way out, and that's the way they had to go.
Yeah, great episode. And that wasn't all in that episode. It was Nick and Lavinia who were really portrayed as sort of fairly or unfairly as this sort of, upper class couple from Vaucluse who were going to use their winnings to buy a boat, really portrayed as sort of, not the most relatable pair. They were depicted often having wine and cheese and camping and glamping and so on.
I think Nick he said that, he thought the last few days on the run have actually been like a holiday. Yeah. And now the reality of the situation is starting to sink in.
And they went, I remember they went to a motel and them both rolling their eyes like, what a dump. While the other couples were literally on the run.
Camping,
doing it rough.
Outback, yeah.
But these two, yeah. So, but ultimately, they were really a quite likable and relatable couple, especially when we got to see the emotion that came through.
I think they felt psychologically beat.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just really looked really tired. Yeah. They were bickering a lot. Yeah. No, neither was supporting the other.
They were walking apart. I remember the imagery of Nick walking like 10 meters ahead of Lavinia. That's like you and me when we have an argument.
Yep, very much so.
Yeah, keep your distance. And they were at that stage where it was like not on talking terms. And they got to a bus stop, and the hunters, and they got onto a coach, and the hunters closed in on them.
So we see two teams. So this
Yeah.
is like 4 people on 2 people.
Yeah. And the hunters closed in on them. Nick leapt off the coach, sacrificed himself, led the hunters away while Lavinia was on the bus.
And she was crying. And I think that's how I would feel if I got separated from you
Yeah.
on the run. It just feels, you would feel so helpless.
Yeah, it was a great emotional scene. Great filmmaking or reality TV. It's one of the few times where reality TV can actually feel like a movie. They really captured it really well, like the heroes being divided, the emotion of it, one getting caught, one
Sacrifice versus separation.
Yeah, one living with the guilt and shame of maybe causing it. Great episode. Season 1, episode 7. If you haven't seen it, go back to 10 Play, check it out. Now, that was our favorite episode, but other really good moments from other episodes was season 2, episode 4, where there was the gamer duo who came up to a tradie for help, and in a massive twist, it ended up that the tradie was the brother of an actual hunter. And he called up his sister and said, "Hey, I've just met 2 guys that are on the run." Fantastic twist. You couldn't have scripted it, like, for real.
Yeah, I think that was really unexpected, especially for a fugitive. You think that you found someone, a good Samaritan, to help you, but it turns out that he is in league with the hunters.
Complete Tyrion Lannister evil plot turn. Fantastic character twist. And then we have season 2, episode 7, where we had Ed and Jimmy on the run, and they were debating whether to go on a pride march. And this was so well put together because it left us not knowing whether they were going to go on the pride march, and then it cut to the hunters at the pride march questioning all these drag queens, people in costume, in Mardi Gras, having a great time, a massive party atmosphere. It was like New Orleans. And they were going from person to person, looking for them, and we weren't sure who they were or where they were. And then, yeah, it turned out that they didn't even go to the Mardi Gras, but the way it was put together was just really exciting. It was very colorful, dynamic, really great visually, and in terms of visual interest and intrigue, you know, just this massive chase sequence almost, or inquiry sequence where the hunters are looking for, you know, a needle in a haystack, a Mardi Gras haystack.
And in a very fun location as well.
Great
you really
location.
Got a sense of the personality of the fugitives, the close contacts they have. And also this is into like a subculture that probably not a lot of us would have come across.
Yeah, and it was really well done. Even though they didn't end up even being there, the representations were great. Just fantastic work in terms of telling a story. So those are our 3 memorable episodes and moments from those episodes. Tell us if you've got any of your own. What are the best episodes? Finales not included, of course. Those ones, get a bit of a pass. But yeah, let us know.
Now back to Luke and Ben. So episode 2 ended on a big cliffhanger. We see Luke and Ben at the paddock of a friend's house. They were running away. The hunters had closed in on them. And they were just out in the bushes. They were lying very quiet, very still, hoping not to get noticed when suddenly they heard a crack of a twig. It seems like a hunter is just right next to them.
Yeah, it was really cheekily edited, this scene, because what they did is they captured Luke and Ben standing there and going, "What was that?" Right? And then they, put some sound over the top of it, of the hunters speaking through the
Intercom
through the comms and saying, "Yeah, they're around here somewhere." As if to put them into the same proximity, into the same space, when in reality, they were probably nowhere near each other.
No, they were actually very, very far apart.
Yeah, so they're on this property that's 7 acres. Now, we don't often use acres in our normal everyday lexicon, but that's the equivalent of 7 footy fields. Massive.
Plus, there's a lot of there's a lot of plants, trees, a lot of undergrowth, foliage. It would be very, very hard to spot someone. Even, if you were wearing pink shorts, to spot someone and to find them.
And they couldn't even put the drone up because of all the PowerPoints, power lines above them. So safety issues, they couldn't get an eagle's eye view of it. So really tough to nail down the guys in this episode.
It was a very thrilling find though, because we have 3 teams of hunters versus a pair, Luke and Ben. So there's 6 people on 2. And they had to make this heartbreaking choice to split up. So Ben says he'll sacrifice himself for Luke. Luke is obviously the better runner. He gets all the money and he's running out onto the roads, trying to find someone to hitch a ride with.
Yeah, so it's like what we talked about last week. What would we have done? Split up. They made that tough call of sacrificing one for the other. They didn't, however, arrange a meetup, which, hot tip, you've got to arrange a meetup just in case you get away. But nevertheless, they make a run for it. And we see this amazing graphic of Luke and Ben splitting up and being literally surrounded on all sides by hunters, 3 teams of 2, as you said.
And it really gives us, I think, a visual idea of how close the hunters are, which direction they were coming in on. And it seems like they are about to be captured.
Yeah, but somehow they get away from the net. And
I was really, really cheering for them.
yeah, it was thrilling stuff. This was really good reality television. They somehow got out of the barrel, these 2 fish, and off they go. They're down the streets, these rural roads, knocking on every door, asking every person that passes for help.
And Luke, you can see how upset he was at having to leave Ben behind. He's like crying.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the first person he approached was a lady jogger, but she had refused.
Yeah.
Well,
She didn't have a
rightly so.
phone.
Yeah, she didn't have a phone, but I think
Yeah.
she also probably seemed quite suspicious of who he is. Rightly so. He is a fugitive on the run.
Yeah, it's I can't wait to see the next neighborhood watch meeting where the neighborhoods like have what is up with the crime rate around here lately. Pearcedale, it's gone downhill.
We see Luke then approaching a house. And he was crying to the person from the outside. He's like, "Oh, I'm a hairdresser. You know, please, I'm totally honest. Please come and help me. I just need a phone. You can put it under
Yeah.
the door."
I know. I've heard of people saying, "Trust me, I'm a doctor. Trust me, I'm a nurse. Trust me, I'm a teacher. Trust me, I'm a hairdresser." That's new. That is
Well,
new.
he does have a fabulous mane of
He does.
long blonde hair. I mean,
You got to trust that.
yeah, you gotta
That's
trust
credibility.
that. We find that Luke finally makes a call to Ben's sister, who arrives with a baby.
And also at the same time or shortly after, Ben also calls his sister. So just serendipitous turn of fortune. They both look like they were jammed up, and now it seems like they're both saved.
How cute does Luke look in the car? He seems like he'll be a really great uncle with his baby nephew.
Pretty cute, but also a little scary having a getaway car with a baby on board. But the things you have to do when you're on the run, right?
Yeah, and he gets dropped off at his aunt's house where Ben is, and finally we see that they are reunited.
Yeah, very happy reunion. This is really emotional. They don't even have time to celebrate for long, but this is really great stuff.
Yeah, because honestly, in the beginning of the episode, I thought for sure they were getting captured, but they've made it out. They've overcome all odds.
Yeah.
And yes, like I can't wait to see what happens next.
Great filmmaking, obstacle, conflict, resolution. They were challenged, they got out of the hole, and then they resolved. Happy ending for all. So far, so good. So before we go to the main thrust of the episode, we go a little bit of a diversion to Ondine and Shelley, our cougar cousins. And a lot of the focus is on Shelley and how she's portrayed as kind of the weak link in the pair.
So we see in this episode she has got a phone that she seems to be talking to someone, and the hunters are alerted to that, and they are trying to find out what phone she is, who she's calling, so that they can identify her location.
So they're spending a lot of time trying to get a cell dump on it. And it turns out that she's not actually using a phone. What she's done is gotten a piece of paper, printed a phone screensaver onto it, and then put it inside a phone case.
This is absolutely brilliant.
This is great stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, like it just throws such a diversion to the hunter. They have to use their resources to try and locate her on something that is actually fake.
Yeah, and they would have spent hours trying to get a cell dump, trying to ping that phone, maybe even gone to an incorrect phone and chased the wrong lead. However, one of the hunters is able to suspiciously identify through CCTV footage and say, that's a fake phone. I don't know about this. How'd you feel this was represented?
I felt like it would have been very hard for them to identify. There wasn't actually any evidence that they showed on the screen that said, this is how I identified that this is a fake phone, because it actually looks very realistic. Yeah. If you zoom in very closely on it, you might maybe be able to see that the phone looked very thin, like a lot thinner than a normal iPhone would.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't know if there was actually concrete evidence.
I think it was a bit of a leap of logic. I think sometimes we talked about this last episode how the producers will, in order to save time, money, and resources, help out either side, and give them a bit of information. This is a fact, it's nothing new, right? So that we don't spend 20 hours looking for a phone that doesn't exist. Hey, we're going to tell you it's a fake phone and we have to let you figure it out. Or we're going to tell you so that you can almost reverse engineer a fact. I felt the same. Like, it's okay if they did do that, but you need to give us evidence of your logic along the way that proves it. Okay, you might have reversed engineered that fact that it's a fake phone. Well, show us the CCTV footage. Show us the still shots that show the phone looking fake, suspicious. This was a bit too much of a leap for me in terms of as a viewer, and I didn't feel satisfied that they had actually come to that conclusion on their own.
Yeah, I agree. I think I felt like if she was using the phone and it was caught on CCTV footage, that maybe the phone was bending, which would have meant that that was just a piece of paper, that would have worked. But in this case, it does seem a little bit suspicious.
Yeah, and in filmmaking, they call this plot armor, where the plot seemingly protects the heroes or protagonists through no logic, or even a deus ex machina, where a solution is come to without any sort of logic, like a saving grace. Think of Lord of the Rings, where at the end, even though they set it up, they're losing the battle, and suddenly Gandalf comes down and just swipes everyone away with one fell swoop. It's a conclusion that isn't really satisfyingly set up.
So we go on to the feature of the show, which is Joanna and Lee, MMA couple from Queensland. So they are on the run and they get into their disguises. What did you think about that?
Oh, this was bad. The whole point of a disguise is to be less conspicuous, not more conspicuous. Like, they've gone from low vis into high visibility, right?
With Lee, I think putting on the dreadlock
Yeah, man.
wig.
Not many people in Australia have dreadlocks, and now you've made yourself one of one. Really, really identifiable. There goes that guy wearing the dreadlocks. Just flashing back to Lee, he's kind of a guy's guy. He talks about himself being an alpha, how in episode 1 he said, look, I'm the strongest guy here. He's really, a macho type of guy. Thinks of himself as a macho type of guy. The kind of guy that walks into a room and sizes everyone up and says, how much do you bench? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Joanna, she is very fit. She is a professional bodybuilder. She's come first in competitions. I'm so impressed by her physique.
Yeah, she's cut up, very impressive physique. But I think their reliance on it, and it's of course they have a right to be very proud of their physiques, but they talk about how their speed and agility and strength is going to get them through this show. I think it's the wrong show.
Yeah, I mean, if you were on Survivor doing a challenge, or say on The Amazing Race, I feel like speed, strength, and agility would really come into
Yeah.
play. But as we've seen, Hunted is actually about outsmarting,
Yeah,
being tech savvy,
yeah.
and
Laying low.
laying low, and I feel like they might be at a slight disadvantage here.
Massively. They don't seem to emphasize those attributes or assets going forward. And so they call up for a cab and they get quoted $270.
Back to Ballarat, which is where the bank heist actually happened, which, to be
Yeah.
honest, I actually thought was quite a brilliant move.
Yeah, just an expensive way to get there though. $270 for a cab. Wow. Anyway, they then walk up to someone and say, "Hi, I'm a fugitive. Can you help me out?" And it works.
Now, this is in direct contrast to Luke just previously because he was asking for help as well. He's saying he's a fugitive, but
It didn't work out
it
so well
didn't
here.
work. And as we saw, he was actually in tears. But for Joanna, maybe because she's a girl, people are just more open to helping her.
Maybe, or maybe it's just the
Yeah.
circumstances, or maybe it seemed like the person actually had watched the show.
Yes.
But look, wherever you are, walking up to anybody and saying, "Hi, I'm a fugitive," is not going to end well for you. I can almost guarantee it. Nevertheless, it does work out well for them because they've got a camera crew and they're famous and they get a lift. And here we see a bunch of mistakes roll in quick succession.
Yes, so they get into a car. Sharon has very helpfully helped them agree to drive them to Ballarat. So they stop at a service station and where they withdrew $40.
If you're going to withdraw any money, you have to take it all. As we've seen, as soon as you touch that ATM card, the hunters are immediately alerted. There's no point taking out $40 just a small transaction like that. Really, the other smart play we've seen in the past is exchanging that card with a member of the public for cash. Maybe here's this $300 debit card, you pass me $200, and so that when they use the card, they get pinged. But either way, it's a diversion. Oh, for them to just take out $40 like it's a normal ATM.
Yeah, I think I was like, oh, I don't actually know if you guys have watched the show and what this actually means because you can get identified so quickly.
It's not even worth it with your normal debit card to go to an ATM at a survey. Have you seen the charges for those? It's like $4 a transaction.
Yes, and
Come
I
on,
think
Lee.
and Lee he took off his wig as well, so he's already like identifiable. So why put
Yeah.
on a disguise if you're going to take it off?
Yeah, those invisible bank charges will get you every time. And then not only that, they turn up in the same car that they leave in, and all the CCTV captures their license plates, the car model, the person they're with, all of it.
Yeah, I think Lee makes this comment and he says, "Well, they can't catch us because we are actually driving off. They don't know where we are driving to,
Bruh,
but they do."
they are. He's kind of unaware. And we talked about how the show frames heroes and villains. I think the show so far to this episode, in its artful way, has framed Ben and Luke as heroes, and these two not as villains, but as a little bit missing the beat. You know, a little bit
A bit clumsy.
a bit clumsy. Yeah, good call.
Yeah. And because I know for me, like with Ben and Luke, I was so willing for them to get away. But for Joe and for Lee, I was like, oh, you guys need to get caught. You deserve this.
Yeah, same.
So the hunters picked up Sharon's contact because her car was at the servo, and they have one of the ground hunters arrive at her house. And there we have some masterful questioning
Mm.
when Sharon's son actually calls up. Now, Sharon was not actually willing to give them any
Yeah,
information.
she was doing really well. She was stonewalling them. They were like, "Where did you drop them off? We're gonna find out." She was like, "No, no, 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 not giving them anything."
Yeah.
And then suddenly, the
Her-
phone rings.
And it's her son, Blake.
Yeah.
And the hunter is like, okay, Blake, I need you to tell me where the fugitives are going. Mum's already told us the
Yeah.
location.
He basically said that we have the information. You're just confirming it. So, yeah.
That was I think that was very skilled on the
Yeah.
hunter's
And
part.
what happens?
He tells them that the fugitives have gone to Ballarat.
He gives it all up. And he's grounded. Mum is not happy. But really nice play by the hunters. Really good way to outwit them. Ooh. And we're off.
We find out later that Sharon actually calls Victor after the hunters have left to tell them that their location has been compromised.
And this is the real mistake that this couple makes is that, yeah, they're hopping from place to place, but they're leaving breadcrumbs everywhere they go that the hunters are then just following. So, yeah, they're going from this house to that house, but they're calling each person everywhere they go, just leaving a massive tech footprint.
Yes, and HQ was able to track Sharon's call, identifies that she is calling Victor, who is a direct contact of Lee.
Yeah, so they're able to quickly ascertain that these guys are friends and they're hot on the chase.
Once the fugitives have received Sharon's call, they immediately leave the house and Victor takes them to a neighbor's house called Nicole.
But again, it's a direct contact. She's actually very close by geographically. He calls her. And also, she is actually a student of his. She's a boxing student of his, an enthusiast.
Once they're at Nicole's house, we find out that Victor has turned off his location service, but his cell still pings his location.
Yeah, not much awareness of how the technology works. Like, even if you turn off your location, if you still use your phone, you can still be sort of pinged.
And he gets an alert saying that the hunters have actually arrived at his house. He actually has live footage of them
Yeah.
knocking on the door.
So he's sort of using technology, but also not aware of all of the technology. And in a way, using technology is his downfall, is their downfall. Because using all these phones, it's just leaving a massive trail for them.
Yeah, so even though they are like leaving locations and changing them, but the hunters still know where they're going.
Exactly. It's almost inevitable. It's a great chase, though. Great stuff. And ultimately, we're on the run again, and they hop into the car with Nicole, and they are on the move in her Hyundai.
Yes. And the hunters have got wind of Nicole's identity from
Yeah.
Victor's direct contact. They know what make of the car she is in and where it's traveling. They can ascertain the ping on her mobile phone, the highway that it's on, and they've alerted the ground staff.
Yeah. And so what we have is one car in pursuit and one car laying in wait. This is really exciting stuff.
We come to an intersection where Team Alpha is waiting for Nicole's car to appear.
Yeah. And as he says, we're going to interdict them, which is a term I've never heard, but yeah, they're going to interdict them. Um, this is thrilling stuff. Even though they turn off their phone, the hunters are then sitting there like train spotting, trying to call out their cars because they have to now go blind visually to identify the cars, and they're calling out like train spotters. Mercedes, no,
Mitsubishi,
no, Lexus, no,
Kia.
and they're waiting for a Hyundai to appear.
And it seems like they've missed them.
Yeah, and it's really well edited here because the suspense here is that they've given up. The hunters have given up. Like we've missed them, and there's a long break, a silence, a lull, and then suddenly across the radio cackle, like a good thriller, we have them in sight.
And they are off. They follow the car, and we see that they're actually just one car behind Nicole's car. And
Yeah, one for cover.
Yeah, and Joe and Joanna and Lee have absolutely no idea that the hunters are just hot on their heels behind them.
They're actually still talking trash at this point. They're like, we are so slick. Even though the hunters have literally been just one pace away all episode, these guys are still talking tough.
And we see a really great move by the hunters where they actually pull alongside Nicole's car, wind down their window, and just wave. And you can just see the shock on Joe and Lee's face.
Yeah, this is so interesting. And ultimately, they get them to pull over. Lee and Joanna jump out. It's a pursuit. Lee gets caught, and
Joe, she runs
She's
really
got some pace.
fast.
She's got some
Yeah,
pace.
she's so petite, but she runs so fast.
she's got
I'm
the
so impressed.
explosive sprinter body. But let's unpack that last scene. So obviously it all turned out well for the hunters. All's well ends well, at least half well. We'll wait for the next episode to find out. But looking back, they choose to identify themselves like policemen and tell Joanna and Lee to pull over.
To be honest, I would have thought that they would have just followed Nicole because it seems very dangerous to be on an expressway reviewing yourself. We don't know what Nicole might do. She might just suddenly go go very fast.
Could cause an
And
accident.
yeah,
Who
it could
knows?
be like a high speed chase on a
Yeah.
highway.
I was curious about this too. I thought the smarter, safer play would have been just to hang back, stay one car for cover, and just follow and see where they're going to go, wait for them to get out of the car, then reveal yourself subtly, quietly, and just ping them on the shoulder. However, they don't do that. Like policemen, they wind down their window and say, pull over. Which, yeah, I feel like this could be really dangerous potentially to have, a bunch of people running across the street or driving across roads away from each other.
And weaving through traffic, running away.
Just the shock alone of seeing a hunter like pull up alongside you has the potential to be somewhat dangerous.
Yeah, because you have like the fight, flight, or freeze. You don't know what either person will do. And sometimes people can act very unexpectedly when the circumstances are stressful.
Yeah. Nonetheless, it creates for a fantastic image of Joanna and Lee in the foreground and a car of the Alphas just pulling up alongside them. And literally moments before, Nicole says, can you imagine if they pulled up alongside us? Well, imagine no longer. It happened.
That was a really great scene.
Yeah. And so would you have... How else could have Joanna and Lee dealt with this situation?
Well, I think like in the case of Ben and Luke, where where they split up and one of them runs off, perhaps with Joe and Lee, one of them could have actually like been sacrificed. The other one could have drove off with Nicole in the car, and
force the hunters to make a decision. Make them divide their resources. That's the number one rule when you're trapped. So, I don't know, maybe Joanna could have hopped out of the car without the money, forced the other car to pull over, lose a hunter on her trail. Meanwhile, Joanna drives off and forces the car to either stay with Lee or Joanna. At least the indecision is what is going to buy them some time and maybe give them an opportunity. But to pull over and both get out of the car, I don't know if it's the right play.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Well, I would have done the old switcheroo play, and I've thought about this before. Actually, it's from a drama that I worked on that had Brian Brown in it, so I'm stealing a bit from that. Thanks, old school. But In this move, I would have gotten Nicole to drop us both off at the park. We jump out of the car, right? We force the hunters to demount their vehicles and chase us on foot through the park. Hopefully, they're a few meters behind. Meanwhile, we get Nicole to scoot around to the other side of the park, and then we jump back into the car and we drive off, leaving the hunters stranded in the middle of the park, where they're forced to run all the way back to their car, start up the engine, and then chase us. By which time, me, Nicole, Lee, Joanna,
They would have gone.
we're off.
Yeah, I think that's a really good play and something that I don't think of. I don't know how you would have come up with this, but okay.
I stole it from Brian Brown, as I said. Great play. I just wish they would have done something like this. I hope it gets to come into some kind of play at some point, but
Yeah, and I guess in situations like this where it is very tense and very quick, it's hard to make these on the fly decisions without thinking too much into it. So I can see why they might have blundered a little bit and just fumble.
yeah. And another really memeable moment, Nicole with a Slurpee. This could turn out to be the new Michael Jackson popcorn meme. She is just watching it all go down with a Slurpee in hand, just enjoying the scene. Really great image.
Yeah, that was really funny watching your friend's downfall while you enjoy Sloppy.
Yeah, and so then we get a scene of hunters versus MMA cardio. We don't know how it's going to go for Joanna, but Lee is done for, sadly. It was good to know you. Unfortunately, I think
You're not as slick as you thought you
not
were.
as slick as you thought you were, pal, but you just didn't come into the show prepared. I don't even know if he watches it, but they did pretty well to
Yeah.
survive as long as they did. But I think their downfall was ultimately not having enough tech savvy and being careful enough and pre-planning
Yeah.
outside their networks.
Yeah.
I think they relied too much on their own networks and too much on technology.
Yeah. So what about for you? Was this the best episode ever?
Yes, I think by far this was the best episode. Not only was it satisfying in so many ways, but we got to see all the things that we talked about. You know, we got to see
A high-speed chase.
high-speed chase. Yeah,
We had very strong characters,
yeah,
and we had this close call where the hunters were kind of like on the trail,
great suspense.
almost like about to pounce, and then we find that the fugitives have gotten away,
Yeah.
and yeah, there's really good pacing.
Yeah, we got to see psychological duress and stress. We got to see, Ben and
Luke being
Luke
separated.
going through it, crying, all that emotion and the joy of being being reunited. It was just fantastic drama all around. Real impact. So that story had a resolution, but still a cliffhanger as to what happens next. And this story between Joanna and Lee also had a resolution, and yet also another cliffhanger as well. So what good dramas will do is they'll conclude the episode, but then leave you hanging as to what happens next a little bit. And they did that in showing the Lee capture, but also showing Joanna potentially get away. Do you think she gets away?
She runs very fast, although I'm not sure where she's going to run to.
Yeah,
I
where's
mean,
she gonna run to?
eventually,
Eventually-
I feel like she's going to
Get
get
ca-
tired,
Yeah.
and then the other hunter, because there's two of them, will come chasing after her, like probably in a car. That's how I feel.
Yeah, she's a
will happen.
bodybuilder, so she's probably really explosive over short distances, but I feel like the cardio might let her down.
Yeah, well, we can only wait and see.
We can
But
only wait and see.
I have to say, this is a great episode.
Best
I loved
episode
it.
to date.
Best episode, and I cannot wait for episode 4.
Yeah.
And this is a wrap up. Thank you for listening to the show. This is a Recreate podcast by Michael and Teresa. You can find us on Recreate on TikTok and Instagram. That's WRECK.CREATE, where you can watch highlighted videos of what we've talked about. If you like what you hear, be sure to like and subscribe to our pod. It really helps us a big deal, and we're extremely grateful for any support you give. We'll be back shortly with the next episode. Stay tuned.